5 stars. Pretty accurately portrays the crazy Marxist left that has heavily infiltrated the U.S. today. Very prescient with what we've seen happen in Afghanistan recently. The President Prescott could easily be Joe Biden before he started getting dementia. Dementia spelled D-I-M-E-N-T-I-A. The ending is a little forced and awkward, I'll admit, but overall an entertaining read that offers a pretty spot on glimpse of where some of the crazy woke left wants to take the U.S. I'd be willing to bet most of the 1-star ratings here were by people who didn't even read the book and just hate Ben because he's a conservative. But that's what woke socialists are good at. Misrepresenting and slandering those that disagree with their failed socialist theories. Well, welcome to the Socialist Shelf, everyone's favorite show where we talk about failed socialist theories. I'm Jacob, here in the same room with Johns.
Yes, we have been in fact photographed together as well. We're not the same person.
Did people think we were?
I mean, we're both. Are we still going with the marble busts thing?
I mean, like it's still the picture, so I would say so. We need a marble bust of Ben Shapiro would be pretty cool though. To add it
to shoot at, I assume.
Yeah, well, something like that. Absolutely. We are joined today because we are recording in my office where I record, but Joss has not recorded here before, with my handsome husband, Sydney. Sydney, welcome to the show. You are now joining the likes of, Vijay Prashad and others by being a Socialist Shelf guest. How does it feel?
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm definitely on their same level. So
No, absolutely. Well, I didn't marry Vijay Prashad. I married you. So,
And tonight's book is a 3-man job. So welcome. We're happy to have you. We need you.
Absolutely, because we are talking about
Ben Shapiro's True Allegiance. He's the writer of several books, is Ben Shapiro, but this is his only fiction book so far.
I would say that all of his books are fiction books, but this is his only novel.
This is his
I
only...
read The Right Side of History.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, take a shot every time he says the phrase Jerusalem and Athens.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Where he makes the correct claim in the first chapter that, quote, Jerusalem and Athens invented art, science, and culture. Which is, well, not the book we're talking about, but that's the frame of reference we're coming at. This is the guy.
And he's talking about, like, old-ass Jerusalem, but he obviously intends, like, ideological continuity with the current Israeli settler colonial project. And, like, as we'll see in his book, his politics have ideological continuity with something historical.
Something along those lines,
yeah.
Also, just for a note, I said we're recording in the same room, so if the audio is echoey or you hear thunder or rain outside, you can't be mad at us. This has been Jacob's excuse of the week, which may be a continuing segment, because I usually have those. So do we want to talk about Ben Shapiro as a guy? Because I didn't write a full bio for this one. I don't know if you did either, but we all kind of are aware of who Benjamin Aaron Shapiro is.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, born in 1984, which I thought was very funny considering how much he invokes it.
that's awesome.
January 15th, was that Martin Luther King Day that year?
It might have been.
I didn't bother to look it up. Yeah, no, he I'm not going to say he needs no introduction, but he's got a big enough profile.
He unfortunately needs no introduction.
Yeah, he's kind of, it's been 10 years, but he was kind of, when I was in college, the sort of conservative wunderkind.
He was the youngest nationally syndicated columnist in the United States.
From the age of 17, yes. And nowadays he's the editor emeritus for that news outlet, The Daily Wire, which is that conservative outlet that was started with seed money from the petroleum industry, the Wilkes brothers, of course.
He was with Breitbart for a while, and then he left because he was like, they were too anti-Semitic for him, being a Jewish man. Occupations listed on his Wikipedia are attorney, businessman, columnist, media personality, and political commentator. Really, the last one is the only thing anybody knows him for. I don't know anything about the attorney thing.
He left
Who's the
California to settle himself and the Daily Wire in Tennessee because in California he couldn't exploit his workers hard enough.
It's true.
What was funny, I found out, is that the Tennessee legislature actually passed a resolution commending him for settling there and choosing to become a resident of the volunteer state. And the resolution included the words, "Facts don't care about your feelings."
Fantastic, which is his catchphrase.
I read that he started writing his first novels at age 6 or 7, I assume including this one.
This one was completely... Yeah, no, I would say, I would say that, but there's so many niche, like, tweet of the week things in that's the only reason I'm not convinced he wrote this book entirely at age 5.
Well, it was brewing. It was brewing, and certainly it's... we should talk about the length of this book. It's longer than a novella, certainly, but I mean, Sydney, you read it in, like, less than a day.
Yeah, it is not very long.
Mercifully.
It's a slog to the brain, but...
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe, Sydney, your I don't know, your reaction physically, mentally, spiritually to reading this work of art?
Not good. I mean, the physical writing, like the prose, reminds me of like a 12-year-old's first fan fiction. So remarkably so that I had to check and make sure I was reading the right thing.
It's bad. I mean, like,
Having
knew it would be.
Yeah, having been 12-year-olds who have written fan fiction, we can speak from experience, certainly.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
But I mean, even at 12, like it's nobody is this racist that young.
No, it's impressively like racist. That is like it's impressively incompetent. That's the thing about this book that like shocked me. Like, I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it was going to be obviously problematic. I knew the politics would be bad. I knew it would be pedantic. I didn't know how hard it would be able to go on all of those things. Like, I just did not think it had a... Like, I almost want to apologize to Bill Clinton and James Patterson for saying it's the worst thing I could ever read.
Well, at the time it was.
At the time it was, but you can go lower. I don't want to jinx myself in saying you can't go lower than this, because there's... Maybe no bottom, and maybe if there's ever a sequel to this, it will be that.
Well, because that's the thing, and and you and I talked about this, right? You suggested that it might set up for a sequel. I don't think that's the case, and we'll get into why. Mm-hmm. But like, that's the difference between this book and something like The President is Missing, because The President is Missing, certainly it's odious, it's evil. In its own way, but this is overt in something in a way that it's entirely. We'll get into it. I'm still shocked.
It's nuts from top to bottom. I love looking at the reviews at the very top. Salon.com says "Meet the new Ayn Rand" is the first review listed,
Glorious.
And like for all the reasons that he doesn't think that's the case. Yes. Ayn Rand is actually a better writer than Ben Shapiro, I'll say.
We're going to do The Fountainhead eventually, right?
We'll have to. That or Atlas Shrugged or Anthem at the very least. But yeah, I'm looking. Ann Coulter called it provocative, intense, and about 5 minutes from becoming reality. So true. So true.
She's about 5 minutes from becoming reality.
Yeah. There's a... Okay, I thought that it says Lieutenant Colonel Alan B. West, and for some reason I read Cornell West because I saw the COL B. West, and I was like, Cornell West did not review this book. Thank God.
What twist that would be?
That would be a twist. Cornell West is like a character in this book being portrayed. Well, the concept of the pastor interested in social justice is in fact a character that is parodied in this book. So
we've got another guy on here. Lionel Chetwynd, Emmy Award-winning screenwriter. I'm looking him up right now. What's he an award-winning screenwriter of?
We're see. Typically we do our research, listeners. I'm not even going to edit around this, probably, because this shows I don't care about this book. Like, I do not give a shit. I'm mad about this book. I will do my best not to give it thought. I will say almost always read the book. Or investigate or think about it. No, do not read this book. Do not think about this book. Do not pick up this book. We pirated this book. Do not give this piece of garbage a cent. Sydney, what were you saying? Sorry.
I mean, it's clear that Ben didn't do any research at all for this book. There's just so much inaccuracies of all the places that it has.
Sydney, I'm sorry. Have you considered wokeness?
I didn't consider
SJW
wokeness.
libs have conquered our society.
I also want to push back on that. He did do research in exactly one aspect. The George Washington Bridge is in fact 604 feet high. You can look that up on Wikipedia. He takes special
If it blew up, would it kill that number of people? Because that's a really... What was it, 6,000?
Over 7,000.
7,000 people at the same time on the bridge.
It's a mile long. Yeah,
Okay, maybe.
See, we slag off Ben Shapiro for not doing research, but, look who's talking.
That's true.
No
one else is slagging off Ben Shapiro.
Well, if you point at somebody with one finger, there's 3 fingers curling back at all of us, right?
That's a good point. Ben Shapiro, not even in the room, owning us with facts and logic.
The one finger that we're pointing at him, of course, is the middle finger.
Yes, absolutely. Before we continue, Sydney, this is a thing all guests on the show have to do. We have to do a Ben Shapiro impression.
Oh God.
Yeah, we actually make all guests do this and edit it out.
I'm sure you do. All right, let's try. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Spot on.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Can't complain. Let's get right into True Allegiance. This book was published in 2016. You go on this, Josh, because you looked into this.
Yeah, a week before the election, the surprise upset where Trump beat Hillary Clinton. Not less of a surprise depending on how closely you were following it from what perspective. But
Ben was probably surprised. I'm gonna be honest.
Trump was surprised.
Trump was described that night as being looking pale and shaken. I mean, not to get too conspiratorial, but have you ever seen the Trump figurine in the Hall of Presidents? They clearly made a animatronic for Hillary and put a blonde wig on it.
Oh yes, I watched a video.
People thought Hillary was going to win, including foreign governments, including just about everyone. It caught everyone flat-footed.
It's so funny as well in the Hall of Presidents because they take out everything provocative, which is what makes Trump Trump, and
Right.
just he has some anodyne shit about I'm standing up for the common man, which is what.
Very good.
He himself puts the lie to that every day.
Fantastic. But yeah, so it was published shortly before that. So this is sort of coming right off of an Obama presidency. This is coming right before what he figured was going to be a Hillary presidency. The president in this book is named Prescott, and it's unclear what year it's supposed to be. Obama definitely was president in this world because it refers to things like the Obama bin Laden raid. However, this is a president who's described as young, good-looking, a political outsider, handsome. He does a lot of stereotypes about Obama liking the media attention or whatever. And he was elected after an unpopular Republican left office, and he was running against a boring general military type. So it is an Obama stand-in, even though Obama exists in this world, kind of. And a Hillary, and just wokeness. Ben gets mad and red in the face when he's making a point before he's able to get the point out and starts stamping his feet before he's able to.
Well, it's make up a guy to be mad at, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't get madder at anybody than somebody who lives entirely in your head.
That's true. So, Sydney, before we get into this book, tell me, what is your, walking away from it? Do you feel like you learned anything? You feel like you grew as an individual?
I wouldn't say I grew. I learned just how demented people can be in the brain.
Yeah, because people like Levon and the woke left and all of them. That's who you're talking about.
Oh yeah, of course. The villains of the book.
Yes, the villains and the heroes of the piece. It's.
We should just get into it.
Yeah, I felt like I was being pumped here and there, but okay, so.
There's 16 plot lines in this book.
Well, it's. I mean, as I keep saying, it's Love Actually for reactionaries.
Yeah, Love Reactionary.
Yes, exactly. Which will be released any day now, shortly.
Actually, I don't have anything. Okay.
So, we have our prologue. Boom, boom, boom. 2016. Boom, boom, boom. New York City. That's where it starts. New York City. So, we have
Ben Shapiro.
Yes. Pardon me. Are you Ben Shapiro? I am. Are you looking for a hero?
And we are looking for a hero.
Yes, and there is not one to be found. Maybe one or two in here, but not the ones that Ben Shapiro wants us to find. So yeah, Jennifer Collier is on the George Washington Bridge, which is 604 feet high, and she's with her daughter And what's the daughter's name even?
It doesn't matter.
She's
dead anyway.
she's a device. They're both devices. So, yeah, the bridge is...
Blows the fuck up. 9/11-2 happens.
Yeah, 9/11-2, Electric Boogaloo.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger than the last one, better than the best one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the bridge is destroyed, and how does Ben Shapiro describe it?
Well, it uses the quote, and this is where I knew he was going to be a really good writer. Quote, she opened her mouth to scream and realized that she was already screaming so hard no sound was emerging.
So wait, she was screaming already, but then she opened her mouth to do so.
And also that's just a sentence. That's not a sentence.
Well, and neither...
That's not anything.
I mean, this is a sentence here, but, like, Jennifer screamed, but it was drowned out in the ear-splitting cracking noise, hundreds of thousands of tons of steel twisting and bending and grating on each other, the sound of a million airplanes all crashing at once. That's a sound. That's
it's
something.
a million 9/11s.
A million, yes. You know, we've all heard a million planes. This is a child. This is a child dreaming of the biggest number that they can imagine, and then thinking of the loudest thing that they can imagine, and then just smashing them together.
And then they take down the bridge, and 9/11-2 happens.
Oh yeah, a dude in a silver Lincoln Continental gets Final Destination 5s. Just
Sydney did have to pause. You did have to pause, I think, after this scene, this prologue, because you were just like weeping openly for the unnecessary dead due to PC culture, right, Sydney?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sydney, I have to ask before we go on. Do you have any like quotes written down, or are you just going in all vibes? Because I noticed you have no notes, and I kind of respect that.
No, I have notes. I'm just
Sydney
not looking at them.
I was gonna give you props. I was gonna give you props. Now I'm gonna have to cut this, or maybe not. Maybe not. But and so
structurally speaking, if one goes into this thing without notes, one can't expect to be as prepared for describing this book.
I can, because I have it all memorized. Much like, because I'm a hero, much like Brigadier General Brett Hawthorne.
Yes.
If there's a protagonist for this book, it's Hawthorne. And let's just describe him, because Ben was rock hard describing this guy. Hawthorne was a bear of a man, 6'3", in his bare feet, and 215 pounds in his underwear, with a graying blonde crew cut and a face carved of granite. But he had plenty of smile lines. He just didn't like showing those to people unless he knew them. I just wrote fan fiction ass.
Do you know what's funny is a little later, so he's got Brett Hawthorne and he's going into his backstory, which is what he does instead of character beats. Mm-hmm. And between junior and senior years of high school, he says, Brett finally hit his growth spurt. Like his dad, he bloomed late, but when he did, he put on muscle and height like a racehorse. He sprouted 5 inches to 6'2". During the backstory, Brett Hawthorne loses an inch, but he gains 10 where it counts, baby.
That is true. That is true. Ben has loves to describe guys as being made of granite, being whatever. It's a very funny 200 pounds without a single shred of fat upon his form. Ben is a big fan of the jacked guys. He enjoys that. And Hawthorne is the closest thing this book has to a protagonist. But there's kind of 5 of them. There's a lot of plot lines. It's a very short book, and you could cut out a third of it very easily, and it would still flow. Sydney, what did you think of General Brett Hawthorne?
He's a character that is in this book. That's my main thoughts on him.
If you had to describe his personality, his motivations, who he was, what would you say?
What a little boy is imagining when he thinks of cool military man.
Absolutely.
That exactly.
Yes, but there is at least there would be some swag in a kid's imagination. He would do something cool at some point. What does Brett do in this book that's cool?
He breaks his arm at one point.
Gets his ass kicked by the Taliban.
Yeah, and it doesn't end up mattering. You hear that it. His arm hurts and it's really bothering him, y'all. But that doesn't stop him from running. That doesn't stop him from defeating people in hand-to-hand combat. It's just an inconvenience for this brick shithouse.
And Brett's backstory is that he was racially discriminated against as a white man as a child. Growing up, he was discriminated against, notably, not just black people, but also the Irish and Italians discriminated against him and wouldn't let him sit with them. This is in the first 10 pages. And in the first 10 pages of this book, the first black character to show up in this book, it describes as a kid who looks, quote,
like he's looking for a lifetime of prison workouts. This is in the first 10 pages describing a teenage boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is totally how normal people talk about minority characters.
Absolutely.
Like it's. Oh, let's get into this kid as well. So his name is Yard.
Yeah.
Because okay, I'll just read it from here.
Ben looked. I was like, "What do I name my character?" He looked out the window. Yard.
Oh man, yeah. Which also explains that character called Squirrel and the character called like Pecan Tree.
Yeah, just the little thing.
Beautiful blue sky. Anyway, no. So nobody knew his real name, the book says. Everybody just called him Yard because he played on the school football team. Stood 6'5", clocked in at a solid 280 pounds, the racist prison workout thing. So he plays on the football team, but his name isn't on the jersey?
His name is Yard.
Like he's not in anybody's class?
I guess not.
Ben, as much as he wants to be an alpha male, has like very little familiarity with like alpha male things. Like he very clearly has no real knowledge of football, certainly no firsthand knowledge, which is fine if you're not obsessed with being the alpha like Ben is. God, just terrible. Brett grows up to be a soldier.
I want to point this out as well. So like this first encounter, because this will be important later. This first encounter with Yard is accosting Brett, of course the aggressor in this situation, not
Always.
possibly provoked, because he thinks that Brett has called him the N-word. And we have it's never explicitly stated whether this is the case, but we have a frame of reference here. He'd made the mistake the day before of trying to befriend a couple of the black kids. That hadn't gone well. He'd ended up with a black eye and a few new vocabulary words to add to his dictionary. So, can we just marinate in that? Can we just ask ourselves, okay, what was he doing to get the shit beaten out of him exactly? Was he perhaps tossing around racial slurs?
I like to imagine that he was in school with a character we'll soon meet, young Levon, and Levon was just like beating the shit out of Brett in high school.
Oh.
I think that's good. That's good, like lore. That's good backstory.
See, some would say that that's contrived, but I think that would actually tighten the narrative a little bit.
The narrative it's already contrived. It's got to be tightened somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Just somewhere, Ben, please.
And as it happens, so Brett is bailed out of the situation because he has a black friend. Like all, conservative men who are worth their salt, they have a black friend. And the black friend smooth talks him out of the situation, basically like runs a kind of a verbal shell game on Yard. No, I called you a slur. And then he starts singing Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah, naturally, like one does.
This is...
Sydney, everyone that comes on the podcast has to sing Ebony. No, I'm just kidding. Go on.
Is being a status quo ghoul like James Patterson or Bill Clinton or Ben Shapiro, does it turn you into somebody who makes musical references from the 70s and 80s, or does that come first and then you get into the politics of it? Because I'm thinking of the Elvis thing.
Maybe it's just along the lines of they're yearning for a sort of lost culture, and they have this idea of what America is. And maybe when James Patterson thinks of ideal America, he thinks of Elvis and FDR and all that. He thinks of that era of the 40s and 50s. Maybe he thinks, and maybe Ben is thinking about Ronald Reagan and those days and those days, and maybe he's making those. I don't know. Maybe that's looking too deep into it. But this idea of pulling from the past instead of because there's very little contemporary in any of this.
Yeah, this is what they took from you, the woke mob. Now Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder can't sing anymore.
There is only one modern reference in this book, and it's to make fun of a Muslim guy for not knowing what "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time" means.
God, from his perspective, too.
Yes, yeah.
So Derek does a Jonathan Lincoln Duncan, as we call it. He goes into the army.
In the business.
Yes. Yeah. And
he meets a woman.
Yeah, he meets a woman, and he has this really weird courtship with her. He's...
Buying prints.
Yes. He's in South Carolina training to be a Marine at the time, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he's at Citadel.
Yeah, Citadel. Yeah, he buys a picture
from Ellen. Yeah,
literally, he's at Citadel because he read a book by who was the fucking author? He read a book about somebody who's whose aesthetic is Southern military brat gothic, and is you know what, this speaks to me.
I had a football coach who went to Citadel who would
Really?
talk about it all the time. So I was always imagining like him when I was imagining Jonathan Lake, or not Jonathan Lake Falcon. I was imagining Brett, which he didn't look anything like him, so kind of clashed. But yeah, Brett and his wife Ellen, who goes on to become basically what Ron DeSantis used to do for the U.S. military, but for the border. Ellen goes on to be a lawyer that just upholds.
I thought you were going to say Ron DeSantis had a miscarriage that prevented him from having children.
No, that's like if Ron. He won't be, but if Ron was a Republican nominee, that would be like the October surprise. No, Ron is like how Ron used to go to Afghanistan and Guantanamo and basically say no war crimes here. Ellen will go on to do that, but for the southern border, and we'll get to that. But Ellen is his to-be wife.
Yes.
Can't have kids, and that makes everyone so sad. And also Ellen and him always like to sign off their conversations with "take a bullet for you, babe," because that's normal.
Yeah,
it's the most normal thing.
Yeah, I mean, y'all do it all the time. You're married.
Yeah, Cindy, you were talking about that earlier. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's just like the most morbid thing to sign off on someone you love. Like, I would take a bullet for you, babe. Like, I don't want you to. Where are you?
Once again, are you back to like 15-year-old shit? Like, I would die for you. It's like, okay, man. And maybe, sure, that's cool, but like, y'all aren't they're not even like in a squad together or something. Like, there is no real reason for them to say it. Like, it's just what Ben thinks is cool.
Yes, and actually, Sydney, I'm glad you said the word morbid here, because I think here is where we really get into the book's bizarre obsession with martyrdom, and I think Ellen's infertility in particular also kind of plays into that in a way that we'll see. So, yes, he goes to who's Derek? Oh, Derek is Brett's friend, I'm sorry. Brett goes into the military, he goes to Afghanistan, and fast forward to the...
And, notably, this is, being written in 2015 or released in 2016, so we are still very much in Afghanistan at the time, which is interesting looking back now, having pulled out of Afghanistan on these like sort of disastrous days, as Ben is sort of imagining the end of the Afghanistan war.
Yes.
In his own little twisted brain.
Yes, and worth noting, Brett by this point has a star-studded is the word, military career. He was just 22 when they sent him to Saudi Arabia. The war was already winding down. February 1991, blah, blah, blah. Yes, they saved Kuwait from Saddam, saved the Saudi oil fields. This spoke to me because I was just listening to Blowback, right? And like all the lying that lied us into there, right? The idea that Iraq was going to attack Saudi Arabia, which was a fabrication on our part. Like, so Brett's already got a kind of chip on his shoulder because, like, okay, like we went in there, but then like we hung everybody out to dry. When we leave, we should have stayed. We should have, hit Saddam harder. Like, so already we're setting up. Okay, there's a rift between him and America's civilian leadership.
Right, and he sets up Brett as this character who's like, if we just bombed them more, there wouldn't have been 9/11.
Literally, like Brett's interviewed about it at one point. Brett. As it happens...
Brett's actually a terrible soldier, because he talks mad shit about the president to the press as a member of the armed forces, which is just... Again, by this book's own logic, this book doesn't hold up. Because Brett's supposed to be the perfect soldier, and that's a terrible thing to do as a soldier. Well,
because he's got true allegiance, right?
Jesus Christ.
True allegiance to what? We will see.
To the flag.
Yes. So, yes, he's pissed about not bombing them hard enough. He's pissed about the use of force rules.
He says they can't fight back, basically, because of wokeness. This book doesn't say wokeness, because that was, like, before the term became big for the right. But, like, SJW, PC, whatever. They can't fight back because of the woke radical left.
Yes. They can't massacre Afghan civilians in the course of trying to establish peace there, like because that's the thing. Minimizing civilian casualties is directly put at cross purposes with the lives of American soldiers, and it's like
Brett literally says in the book, the only way we can fix this is a 1950s style British invasion of Afghanistan, and using British tactics. 2 reasons that's insane. 1, read anything about what the British did in Afghanistan in the 1950s. 2, do you see any Brits in Afghanistan? They lost too, motherfucker! You're so stupid! Oh my god. That didn't work either! Jesus Christ.
Yes. So the incident that gets him particularly famous is he's stationed in Afghanistan, and he's in a public square, and there's a donkey coming toward him and his like detachment, and there's a kid on it. And Brett, with his eagle eyes, spies this cell phone strapped to the donkey that's a detonator, and he does a trick shot to destroy the detonator and panic the donkey without endangering any civilians, of course. And he comforts the kid who falls off the donkey. And yeah, he's on the cover of Time magazine. This is where the president starts cultivating him as an ally.
President Mark Prescott.
Mark Prescott, yes.
Embrace Levon Prescottism.
Levon Prescottism, yes. It hasn't been tried.
It hasn't. No, it's tried in this book and it works.
Prescott is the big, like I said earlier, he's like Ben's parody of like Obama or what he considers Hillary or something along those lines. And Prescott, I just wrote anti-war angry emoji in my notes. He promotes Brett because Brett is famous. But then, Brett gets hit with some fake sex allegations because that always happens to good men.
Those broads, Me Too, and people left and right.
Right, and then he criticizes the president, and that gets him sent back to Afghanistan with less troops, and the president basically tries to Benghazi him. Is again, Ben's idea of what happened at Benghazi. But he's not good at it, basically. And the book opens up with him in Kabul, Afghanistan, which, by the way, Ben immediately describes as a cyst in the heart of the mountains. Just the open racism shown, especially for Muslims, Arab people, just repeatedly calling them barbarians, cave dwellers, backwards.
Yeah.
It's incessant, the entire book. Not just the characters, but also the third-person narrator. It never stops, the entire book.
And, of course, Brett has to be right about everything.
Yeah, it's definitely way more racism than I was expecting. Like I was expecting a little bit, but the book basically implies that every single Muslim person's a terrorist.
Yeah, or like the one good Muslim guy was like fine with terrorism for a while until 9/11,
and then became an FBI informant.
That's that's the only good Muslim guy.
God.
To Ben. Ben is also, again, not very good at working inside his own logic because this book opens up with the Taliban retaking Kabul. And the people rising up and supporting the Taliban, they pull off an operation that just kicks the American soldiers' ass, despite America having pulled out.
This in particular, like really, really stood out to me. I mean, first of all, so like again, Ben blames nobody but the Afghans for what's going on in their country. Not the invasion that's empowering warlords and causing strife there, but right, he says here, Afghan troops went AWOL, melting into the Taliban ranks, recognizing that once the U.S. was gone, they'd have no protection. I mean, you know why the Afghan army folded so quickly when the Taliban advanced on Kabul, right? It's because they were starving and poorly paid. Mm-hmm. Right, you want to he wants us to imagine that Americans are these benevolent liberators when they're not. But no, so we come here. They tell him to follow the lead of Ambassador Beauregard Feldkauf.
That guy rules.
Yeah, that guy rules. Just this effete, so totally like ineffectual politician, major donor to the president. He then proceeded to bungle the job so badly that none of the local Afghan warlords would even talk to each other, which wouldn't that unite people against America?
You'd think, but
there's also just the fact of the matter that Ben is even, under their own logic, acknowledging that the U.S. is working with warlords to keep Afghanistan running.
Yes. But then we get, in my circuitous way, to what really pissed me off. So, this paragraph here. At 9:13 a.m., the Taliban launched 3 simultaneous raids on the outskirts of Kabul. The raid kept U.S. troops and their sparse allies occupied for just a few precious minutes, long enough for a fuel truck to drive into the center of the city. The driver approached the crowded Kabul Furushka, parked the vehicle, and then whispered to himself, Allahu Akbar. And then, of course, suicide bombing. I want to point out, this chapter, the whole book, is told from a third-person, non-omniscient point of view. We're seeing this from Brett's point of view in this chapter. We know what he knows, except for here, where it diverts to this particular driver. This sentence is essentially a sacrament for bigots. It's a fucking racist communion wafer, right? How do we know the driver whispered it to himself? Oh, because this is what those people do. That's what that's what Ben's doing. Like it's
Joss, I hate to tell you this, but have you considered wokeness?
I have frequently
considered. Have you considered the radical left SJW?
I'm going to become a professional woke school.
BLM, wokeness, gender ideology, critical race theory. Have you considered that?
Yeah, no, gender is over.
Okay, good point. Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. It also just breaks the rules of writing. Not how it works. Not how a third-person close narrative works. And he does this throughout the book a bunch of times. I didn't bother to write them all down, but it happens over and over. He breaks the concept of a third-person close. Sometimes it's omniscient, sometimes it's not. So it's just a functionally, like, fail of a narrator. Failure of being a narrator just as a writer. Again, getting back to this fanfiction-ass bullshit. And this is the kind of guy who likes to whine about participation trophies, who likes to whine about people needing a hand up. If Ben was not just this conservative, whiny pundit who had his following of just like failed children, this book would not be published anywhere. This book, you could tell like this would not have gone anywhere. This is a just fundamental failure on every level, not just ideologically, but it does not work as a book. Mm-hmm. It is bad. Sorry, Sydney, you look like you have a thought.
It's just the amount of times the perspective changes, just like mid-chapter, sometimes mid-paragraph. Nothing to warn you it's changing. You have to go back and reread it just to figure out what's going on.
Which is funny because at the top of the chapter has the name of the character. So it should be from their perspective. Like, that's how that works. But regardless, the Afghanis resistance and the Taliban defeat the remaining U.S. soldiers. Brett has a whole like hero moment where he's trying to run away. He tells Brett and his one of his guys jump off a 40-foot building, and he says roll and you'll be fine because Ben thinks iframes are real. It describes a man getting shot as looking like a Pez dispenser. It is deeply baffling. And then just it goes a little out of order, but Ben describes this guy running to the airport. His arm is hurt. He gets to the airport. They've slaughtered everyone, including the Lib ambassador, and he gets taken in by the terrorists. The end of that part of the story. We switch to President Mark Prescott, who is planning to do a communism, Nazism, woke liberal jobs program.
Yes, he's deathly afraid of becoming Jimmy Carter. Ben Shapiro makes the Jimmy Carter comparison a few times, right?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, somebody who tried his hardest and just couldn't. He's got a weird amount of I want to say respect or grudging respect for Jimmy Carter.
Maybe I don't know because they hate Jimmy Carter.
They do. But I mean, it's. I didn't see a whole lot of vitriol in it. Maybe I'm just not immersed enough in this stuff.
I remember Jimmy Carter being like so often cited as like an example of like the most failed president. And like it was a terrible president. You want to talk about why there's a war in Afghanistan? Talk to Jimmy Carter, but like not for the reasons they think. Far from the furthest left economic president. In fact, he deregulated a lot of stuff. The stuff he did to the truckers' unions, what he allowed credit card companies to get away with in the early 70s. But that's not really the point. It's a weird comparison, but Mark Prescott has now this vision of making basically a jobs guarantee, not even a jobs guarantee program, a program that incentivizes companies to hire people, and if they don't hire people, there is basically the government will directly hire people to work in key industries. Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah.
And what's it called? Because it's got a really good and creative and clever name.
Yes, the Work Freedom Program, which, if you're a student of history, and in particular, if you're a conservative student of history, as Ben Shapiro's target audience is, that immediately lights a candle in your brain. Work freedom. Oh, who else said stuff about work and freedom? Arbeit macht frei. The Nazis. Work liberates. Like that's the tenuous connection that he's making in your head with again just a jobs guarantee program. That's it.
And let me read this quote, because, yeah, obviously he's doing the work will make you free thing, but listen to this quote that is supposed to be the definition of unreasonable. Quote, everyone recognizes the value of freedom, but what did that mean other than the right to a job? Freedom meant nothing if you couldn't put bread in your child's mouth at night. And America is a country of workers. Freedom was work, and work was freedom. Work freedom. Simple, easy, repeatable. And, like, look, obviously the work freedom, like, we can see what he's doing there. But the concept that it is a wild idea to say you should be able to put bread in the mouth of your child and that you are unfree if you can't do that, and Ben is like scoffing at that idea. He's not good at this. And he's not, to be clear, he's not doing a thing where he's writing a villain who has noble intentions. Like, it's not that. Because if he was doing that, then that would be something. A villain who wants to have a good goal and fails, it is not that.
Oh yeah,
It's
I mean,
not what
Mark Prescott
is.
is he, right here, the handpicked protege of the power brokers, right? He dodges all the exposés about his early political career, his rocky marriage, his connections to some of the more shady characters in town. He's 100% a manipulator.
Which those are all mostly Obama references there, talking about the background, the Chicago machine, things like that. He even throws in the bit of no one reads like me off a teleprompter, which is literally was like a outrage of the week around the time he was writing this book about Obama and teleprompters, like one of those Fox News outrages of the week.
Oh, was he wearing a tan suit? And
honestly, I'm surprised. I'm surprised the tan suit didn't make it this book. Sydney, what did you think of President Mark Prescott?
I mean, it's clear what he's trying to do there. Like, it's the Obama inspiration's very clear. It's clear he's just like, these are what all the woke liberals are like. They all just want the media to love them and people to love them. They don't believe any of this shit.
What do you think? What do you think of Mark Prescott as a guy? Do you, not what Ben is going for, but would you follow Mark Prescott?
On Twitter? Yeah.
Okay, very good. What do we think Mark Prescott's posting? You got any good ideas? Selfies?
He's probably read fucking President is Missing.
That is true. A lot of that. At the end of the day, he doesn't describe a guy that's particularly socialist, Marxist, anything like that, despite him wanting him to be. He doesn't describe a guy that's... The guys to the right of FDR, I'd say pretty objectively, and LBJ for that matter. The Work Freedom Program, which Ben would probably call FDR and LBJ Marxists. But, like, the Work Freedom Program is essentially, like, not even as extreme as some of the jobs guarantees that, like, helped during the New Deal and stuff.
No, certainly not.
And the New Deal wasn't socialism, to be clear.
Oh yeah. So there's a book called The Color of Law. I forget precisely the author, but let me look it up right quick. The Color of Law. It's about the.
Is it a sequel to The Color of Magic?
How did you know? Yes, The Color of Law by Terry Pratchett. No, by Richard Rothstein. It's about de jure like segregation in housing in the United States, right? And I'm currently reading that right now. It came to my mind because when you said we were talking about the New Deal, right?
Right.
So I was aware that child labor restrictions have been looser historically in the agricultural industry.
Right.
The reason that the reason that is, Rothstein points out, is that was a concession to get Southern Democrat votes on the New Deal because the agriculture industry, especially in those states, predominantly employed black people.
Right.
And how best to keep black kids out of school than to keep them in the fields.
Right. Notably, I did some work for Liberation News on an article about child labor. By the U.S. Department of Agriculture's own admission, there are still over 500,000 children who work in the fields under the age of 12. That's by the admission of the Department of Agriculture. They're gonna do the numbers that make them look the absolute best. Most of them being migrant labor. Of course, Ben sees the migrant labor only as very dangerous, but we'll get to that.
Well, there's somebody who does migrant labor rights, in his eyes, that we'll soon meet.
But so that's what the president is doing. The president is borrowing for the money from China. There's like implication that that's going to be a plot line, and then it really isn't. Aside
it doesn't
from
go anywhere.
At the very end, there's a reference to the Chinese like owning America, but like whatever. But like they're borrowing money from China. Okay, who gives a shit? Ben doesn't understand how borrowing money in the government even works because he's like, we have no money, and it's like Ben doesn't know anything about concepts like modern monetary theory. Ben doesn't understand the concept of really anything. Ben doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what a bond is. Ben is not
petrodollar, the war reserve currency.
Right. There are actually there are smart conservatives. They're evil, but smart conservatives. Ben is not smart.
It's weird, right? Because there's one thing that he gets right in this chapter, and it's that the official unemployment figures don't count people who have stopped looking for work.
That's true. Yeah,
it's broken clocks,
Well, they used that a lot. That was a big grievance in the Obama years when Obama cited unemployment going down, is they said, well, it's probably people who aren't looking for work. Now, it is true that the actual unemployment numbers were higher given that. However, employment did go down to some degree during the Obama presidency. I would hope so if coming off of a recession. But that was just like one of those things. There's a lot of here, if you like know the language of the like sort of Fox News right in like 2014 for 2016, it's just riddled through here. Because at the end of the day, Ben is online as anyone, probably the most online of all of us. He has his main account, but he probably has like 10 sock puppet accounts. And that's the truth. Soledad Ramirez.
Yes, this is the next chapter.
Here's a plot line that doesn't need to be in the book. Sydney, tell us about Soledad Ramirez.
This is the one that particularly pissed me off because of the involvement and assumed power of the EPA. So she's a cattle rancher in California, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's pissed at the government because due to an endangered fish, the water's been cut off to her ranch. Not completely, she still gets water, just not enough. And now she's having to sell off all her cattle. Cattle's dying because of the stupid, powerful EPA. Like that just particularly pissed me off because not only does the EPA not have this kind of power, they cater to cattle ranchers more than anyone. Like currently, the gray wolf is almost extinct in America just because cattle ranchers wanted to continue killing them.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Sydney, just to show your cards here, what did you study in college?
Environmental science.
So,
Yeah.
Is it possible that you are working for the EPA right now, and you are maybe speaking on their behalf, defending this sort of corrupt system from the inside, and that maybe you are like a mole for the EPA on this podcast?
It's possible, but I think I would have better looking paychecks if I worked for the EPA.
That's fair enough.
This has been the Socialist Shilf? Sorry.
I was trying to come up with a good riff off of that, but I don't put sound effects in this often, but it would be funny if I put like a boing yoing yoing.
You definitely should.
Yeah. Listener, if I don't cut this part out, then you'll know that that's what like I intended to do and didn't. But yeah, the Soledad Ramirez, because the sly implication is California's water problems are not because of climate change, but because of the EPA, because of wokeness.
Climate change and billionaires, like...
Yeah, literally stealing.
Yeah, literally stealing it, using it for cash crops, like instead of like...
And Soledad Ramirez, and this is how you know she's one of the good ones, she brings the SWAT teams cookies. And why are there SWAT teams? The SWAT teams are at her farm because she blew up the Environmental Protection Agency's building in California. And that's okay in Ben's eyes.
This is remarkable to me. Like, within almost back-to-back chapters, we've had 2 truck bombs. One from the Taliban, one from this 52-year-old, like, smallholder, like, small business tyrant rancher. But the one is okay because it serves American capital. Mm-hmm. And the other is not because it's the Taliban.
The funniest thing about it is that she describes she uses all her fertilizer and manure to make the bomb. Mm-hmm. If she had simply taken that and put it on the soil... She could have started growing like a low water crop like oats or soy and saved her ranch.
Well, soy, of course, you would suggest eating soy. Uh-huh. Once again, the woke libs.
That's just what cattle ranchers usually
switch to. I know. Soy boys.
And, I should say, like, not specifically like the Taliban's truck bomb, even though it's the Taliban's truck bomb in this, but like that you can be a small business owner in America and resort to these tactics, right? But Ben here is identifying any and all resistance from Afghanistan with the worst and the most fucked up. Not to say that, we didn't fight people who were doing truly sick shit in Iraq and Afghanistan, but like he's identifying all resistance with the worst of the worst, like with the Abu Musab al-Zarqawis, right?
It's also notable that he says she was broke with only $25,000, a few hundred head of cattle left in her ranch.
Oh boy.
And it's like, I'm sad for you, Soledad, that you don't have water on your ranch. $25,000, a few hundred head of cattle on a ranch is still pretty damn good. I'm sorry. To say that she's gone, it's fine, whatever. But like...
And so also, drinking water for entire communities, that's going away.
Yeah, she's now got, though, a militia around her to protect her. So I wrote, she did a based Patriot Unabomber on the EPA. Based Patriots come protect. Standoff, 3 exclamation points. Cookies! 3 exclamation points. Like, that's my notes on the chapter.
Her ranch is surrounded by the SWAT team, but then that SWAT team is surrounded by an even bigger perimeter of, like, right-wing militia dudes?
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And then one of them ends up, and that's in a future chapter, but it's, like, fine. One of them named Adrian, right? one of the SWAT guys is like, this isn't the country I signed up to serve. And so he like gets her out of there and like slaughters several guys. They go on the run with some of her based patriots and form anti-Antifa. Do the canceling out in your own head.
Yeah, this is like the alt universe version of like Clive and Bundy, like how that goes, right?
But speaking of armed groups trying to get their wishes, let's talk about the greatest character in the entire fucking book. LeVon! Woo! Let's fucking go!
LeVon Williams, yes, of Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit was a shithole, but it was his shithole. That's like the quote immediately after he gets introduced. Ben is a racist, if y'all didn't know this.
Yes, he describes Detroit as a shithole thrice in 4 sentences. And
we were in Detroit.
Yeah, I was there a few weeks ago. It's fine.
Cindy, what was that building you were talking about? We'll get back to it, but...
Oh, this Detroit Central Station, I think.
Yeah, that they use because they said it's burnt out, no one can invest in it, no whatever. We were there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they started refurbishment in 2011, and by 2015, like all the windows were replaced, electricity was back up, like the basement had been drained.
Mm-hmm.
It's occupied. There are people there refurbishing it. It's not like half burnt down, covered in graffiti, like he describes.
We were on 8 Mile. There are businesses on 8 Mile. They aren't all boarded up or protection racket barber shops.
8 Mile is where the good Kroger is.
I will say I would like watch a miniseries about a protection racket barber shop. That does seem like a good idea.
I'm surprised that hasn't been done. It has to have been.
Might have been. That would be a pretty good comedy. But yeah, LeVon runs sells crack. Runs a barbershop and a protection racket.
This pissed me off so hardcore. This is one of the parts where Ben just like goes off the rails and does a conservatism, right? Where he just drops a few conservative talking points that doubtless you've run into on social media at some point if you're online. LeVon and his crew shuttled crack cocaine. That drug had gone out of style in the mid-1990s thanks to the federal crackdown on crack dealers. Black politicians had been the biggest advocates of putting crack dealers on different footing than powder cocaine dealers. You see what he's doing here? He's holding black people responsible for their community's own over-policing, right? It's this grand moving of the goalposts here as the right gives ground on this stuff, right? First, they advocated for different treatment for crack v. cocaine. Then they said that black politicians do it, right? Right, it's vile. And
it has nothing to do with the plot, to be clear. He just decides to talk about it. But yeah, LeVon, despite being, involved in all this gang stuff or whatever.
6'3", 220 pounds. Notably, he's got an inch and 5 pounds now on Brett?
Yeah, no, big, strong guy. Who is, he went to college educated, quotes Shakespeare sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Notably, there's like some weird stuff about he gets a rush out of fighting, like when he would debate college Republicans, and then he talks about like sleeping with white women and stuff like that in this way that like, first of all, again, I'm going to say it again, Ben's a racist, but second of all, I genuinely believe Ben got out-debated in college by a guy who then fucked his girlfriend. I think LeVon is a real guy who fucked his girlfriend.
It has to have been somebody, because like there's examples of college students like standing up to him and like taking the fight to him, and he doesn't post those, of course.
Mm-hmm. No, I think when Ben was in college, I don't know, but like there's obviously the whole racist. It's all racist.
It's old timey racism too. Mm-hmm. Like we'll talk about it. Like it plays into all the right's like darkest fears about black men coming in and like defiling white women's virtue.
Right, and LeVon is now in cahoots with Big Jim, a pastor, civil rights leader.
Yes.
And Big Jim is basically like an Al Sharpton, Cornel West, one of those guys.
Any black community leader, right? Who speaks out, whenever there's...
A few decades ago, he would have used... This would have been an MLK stand-in. Now Ben can pretend 100%. Like he would have been buddies with MLK because, the same thing that Lenin identified, that people can call themselves Marxists after Marx died and then said, don't laugh. Mm-hmm. That classic thing, they now do it with, great civil rights heroes. And Ben does the same thing. But yeah, and Big Jim and LeVon come up with a dark plot. And we'll explain, in the dark plot is to get a kid, an 8-year-old boy, to harass a police officer until the police officer murders the child. It describes the scene. There is an 8-year-old boy who is wearing a Homer Simpson t-shirt. and he's got a toy gun in his pocket, and he's threatening the cop with it. And the cop shoots the 8-year-old boy, and blood pools out of Homer Simpson's face, is the exact quote.
And this is written like a horror film. Right? The kid's the kid's using he sounds like an adult, he's deliberately written to sound like that, and the cop, it's from the cop's perspective, oh my god, I'm gonna get killed. He has a brief flash of fight or flight instincts that drives him to pull the gun and shoot the kid.
It's wild, especially considering this is a real thing that has happened. And to use real stories, which there are real stories of young black boys being killed by police having toy guns on them.
To me, rice.
And to not just use that story at all, which is vile, but to use that story and to apply there was some kind of plot behind it from the left.
Right.
He's not even able to just say, hey, there was a bad cop and then the left used it in a bad way. Because he's not subtle enough to even do that.
No, the cop himself, similarly to Brett talking about how the United States wages war, right? The cop is I can't use force because of the big bad consent decree in my city.
And notably, notably, the cop will get off for this. The DA will give him off. And I'll say, the conspiracy aside, which the DA doesn't find out about, how the hell did he get off for this? There was no reason for him to get off for this. He shot a kid with a toy gun.
Yeah, I do also want to note, the book describes this. The kid, number one, never takes the fake gun out of his pocket. And number two, the cop describes throughout the whole thing that he's never 100% positive it even is a gun that the kid is reaching for. It could be his cell phone, it could have been a piece of candy. He
also describes him as being point blank. There's so many things that don't work here. But once again, within the Ben's own logic, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
This cop murders a kid and we're supposed to feel bad for the cop. There is... And he wants to create this fake Antifa BLM conspiracy around it. And he's going to spread lies about Levon, the Liberator. And Levon did not pay that kid to do that. I do not believe that. I will back Levon. Uncritical support for Levon, Marxist Levonism.
Yes.
Because Levon is awesome in this book for the most part. But it's very frustrating. And of course they're going to do a whole civil rights movement off of them. And it's just BLM scaremongering.
This I didn't notice before. So this next chapter here is Ellen, right? Because Ellen's a staffer for the governor of Texas.
Bubba.
So it starts... El Paso, Texas.
Bubba.
Another dead kid. That's the first sentence of Ellen's chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's back to back. The police officer, Ricky O'Sullivan, shoots the kid, and then El Paso starts off with another dead kid, right? But
it's a different one.
Yes, it's a different one, A. And B, it's not, the Border Patrol that's brutalizing kids like in real life. It's, the coyotes, the people who move people across the border, they really did a number on him. Again, it's back to back. He's putting the brutalization of minors of color in this same frame of reference, right? That it's always their fault, that they're always doing it to themselves, not the repressive force of, the white settler colonial state that we live in.
And if you want to even more proof of that, within a few pages of that, it talks about they're letting minors across the border. And then it says, but minors can be ages 14 to 17. Gang age. And I just wrote, fuck you, Ben, fuck you, Ben, fuck you after that. Because, what else is there to say? And in that same part, she says, this is Texas, not cartel country, about people dying. And anyway, the cartels murk Ellen's friend, Vivian. And she runs back to tell governor-based Bubba, who is...
So, Bubba Davis, yes, is the governor of Texas. I imagine him as, there's a video game called Shattered Union about a Second American Civil War that I used to play, and the governor of Texas in the opening cutscene of that game looks exactly like how I imagine him. For stuff that more people than just me have seen, imagine Sergeant Pepper from Live and Let Die, that one James Bond film.
Yeah.
Just white, doughy, kind of, a cigar chomping, just the caricature of the ugly America.
Sydney, what do you think about all this? You've been quiet for a second there.
Well, first of all, I think Bubba Davis is the perfect name for a governor of Texas.
Tell him what his campaign slogan was.
Don't
let them hornswoggle you.
Don't let them hornswoggle you.
And Ben is going to talk about people who look down on Southerners. Ben is writing a Southerner like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not okay. Yeah, that's not. Come on, man.
I'm from Texas. I've never once said the word hornswoggle.
It's a
there
great.
you have.
I will say it's a great. It's a
You got
great
me.
word. I gotta hand it to him. Hornswoggle's a great word. I'm not mad at it, but it's so absurd. And Bubba Davis is gonna be basically the guy in government who's our hero in this book. Who he's going to represent the institutional resistance.
This is just,
and he militarizes the border even further. This book implies the border has no security on it, and Bubba Davis basically will and Ben's ahead of the curve on the whole "let's invade Mexico" thing that's now very much in vogue. But this book is all about how we need to invade Mexico, at least in the Ellen parts.
Yes, because just like Ricky O'Sullivan complains about in the previous chapter, right? Oh, the police are underfunded, despite the fact that, I mean, it's all the same from Ben here, right? He complains about the police being underfunded, right? This is 4 years before 2020, which saw the biggest uprisings against police brutality in living memory, perhaps. And we don't see a single reduction to a police budget greater than a single-digit %. In fact, Biden in his first year in Congress doubles the federal police hiring budget, right? So this short staffing, this budget problem doesn't exist that Ben is saying does, right? And by the same token here, Customs and Border Patrol, ICE, which he specifically name drops, is also said to be short-staffed and underfunded and completely unable to deal with, there's a flood of immigrants coming over the border. Oh, there's a crime wave. Oh, minors are being, brutalized. Again, who's known for brutalizing, migrants in their care? American Border Patrol personnel, right? He literally, he mentions a scramble to find baby formula, right? And I remember listening to a Tucker Carlson piece on Fox News back when he had a show, just for some, opposition research. And he brought up baby formula during the shortage, right? And he's like, Biden's sending baby formula down to the border, starving, the good, honest American white babies, he implied. And literally, he's taking he's taking this problem of corporate negligence, depriving people of necessities, and he's imputing it on people trying to cross the border in search of basic subsistence, right? And that's what it is, right? It's literally just we have to have a supply of baby formula to keep people from perishing and starving. But literally, Ben is like, no, these people are coming here and stealing it. I'm getting less and less articulate as I'm raging about this, but you see what I'm saying, right? It's all America cannot fail; it can only be failed. And it can only be failed by these outsiders or by these fifth columners who live here.
Speaking of America not failing, only being failed, the Taliban's kicked the shit out of everyone.